agrees, and then they vote for banishment, and then that person will be also a traitor or faithful. So that's the general gist of the game.
Right.
There's lots more stuff they throw in and stuff, but it's such a good game.
Oh, good.
It's good TV. But I love about them doing it. We've also made sure that the round table on Friday is not on Teams. It's going. We've got a meeting room ready for it. Oh no. Someone parking up or anything? Good evening. Welcome to the Employment Policy Committee, Bletchley, Fenny, Stratford Town Council. At the moment, we currently just have 2 councillors here, so we're not quite quorate, but I will give it a couple of minutes, and hopefully we will become quorate. We've had no apologies that I'm aware of, have we, Carl?
No, we haven't. I'll just check the car park.
I think I might hear some voices outside. I might be wrong. And I might just be hearing voices.
We are hopeful.
So for those online, I can confirm we are now quorate. I will just ask everybody to just wait for everyone to sit down.
Yes, you sit on the left one. Is that all right? What I will do is I will just introduce everyone here. So for the benefit of those who are watching online on the live stream or after the meeting online. I'm Councillor Ed Hume. I'm Councillor in the Stratford Town Council, and I'm Chair of the Employment Policy Committee. I will go to my left.
I'm Councillor Keith Ely. I'm a Town Councillor and Chair of Finance and Governance Committee, but also a member of this committee.
I'm Gavin Bedford. I'm a councillor as well, and I'm also the Vice Chair for this committee.
I'm Delia Shepherd. I'm the clerk to the council.
I'm Councillor Richard Sumley, Councillor from Newton Leys Ward.
I'm Councillor Nathaniel Kelly-Wilson. I am Chair of the Town Council and a member of this committee.
Great, thank you. I did ask the clerk of this before whether we had any apologies. Can you confirm that we do not have any apologies because we're all here now? Item 2, debate councillors' declarations of interest in matters on the agenda. Do any councillors have any interest to declare? Right, that's fine. Item 3, to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask, are they approved?
Agreed.
Agreed. Amazing. For public speaking, Clark, have we had any notifications for any public speakers? I'm assuming not.
No, we haven't.
Okay. Just to remind everyone that the council meetings are being recorded, I'm sure nothing will change at all because of that, but they are being recorded. That moves us on to item 5, to confirm adoption of the uniform policy approved at the last meeting of this committee. Clark.
Yes, if you remember, it was agreed that the policy would be adopted, but I was asked to strengthen the paragraph on, 2 paragraphs, one on dressing for the day that you're having, and one on conduct that was considered unsuitable when employees were wearing uniform. So on page 7, there's a couple of paragraphs that have been amended slightly. Yeah, the one on page 7 is the paragraph. It's the third up from the bottom, which gives examples of activities that might be unsuitable if wearing uniform. And then on page 8, there's the final paragraph addressing managers, strengthens the council's requirements about dress at formal council meetings, and if managers are meeting members of the public.
That's great. Are we all agreed with the policy that's in part of that?
Agreed.
Agreed. That's straightforward. Item 6, to discuss feedback on the proposed introduction of a menopause policy.
Yes, this has been consulted on with all the staff.
we did have some very, very positive feedback from female members of staff in particular, saying that they were pleased to see that the council was recognising that this was an issue which could and should be discussed in the workplace if necessary. There was one query which is the paragraph at the bottom of page 12 and the beginning of page 13, which suggests who should be asked for support. One member of staff was concerned that the officers and the councillors referenced in that paragraph might all be male, and that a female member of staff might not feel comfortable speaking to a male member of staff or a male councillor. So that was one piece of feedback that we have, which I haven't amended the policy to address yet. You may wish to amend that. It was also suggested that it should be made clearer that any discussions with a councillor would be treated sensitively and in confidence, because I think it's not been made quite as explicit with the chair of the Employment Policy Committee. I thought it was clear that that was taken as read, but that could perhaps be strengthened. And then finally, at the bottom of page 13, the paragraph up from the bottom on sickness, one member of staff questioned the sentence which says there is no expectation on you to work if you're unwell because of menopausal symptoms. If you are sick and unable to work, you should follow the procedures set out in the employee handbook. You do not have to disclose that your absence is related to the menopause if you wish to keep this private. And the question, however, we want you to feel that you can be open about the reason. The question was, well, you know, you would normally have to disclose the reason for your absence, so why is that sentence in there? So those are the points that have been raised for you to consider.
I'll open up to the committee.
Well, as you know, I'm not happy with the need for it. I recognise the need for illnesses of any description to be recognised by this authority and to be treated in a very, very sensitive and humanitarian way. I don't know why the menopause has been singled out for inclusion in this document. Why, for instance, have we not included things for migraines, which are equally, what do I know? I only know about migraines, but there are numerous illnesses that could be considered for adoption into this document. Where do we as an authority stop? I would have hoped that we would have come up with an overall wording to cover a variety of illnesses and problem for the workforce. I will agree that when this comes up to vote, I shall vote in favour of it, but I would still like to see it incorporated in a different document.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ely. Councillor Kelly-Wilson, you had your hand up first, and then we'll go to Councillor.
I hate contradicting people, but I think the reason why this policy is needed is because menopause is not an illness, and it is something that is natural and is something that happens. And I think if we are committed to creating an open and supportive culture, we need to do that. A few of the points. So I fully appreciate that this is a transition and it's a new policy and it's something different. I think that we as a council should be championing that you can approach your line manager, whether they are male or not, and you should be able to approach a councillor. Now, I appreciate that some of our employees may actually fear what the response might be, but I feel that we can't set policy on the basis of what might happen. We should be setting the policy that we feel is right. I think that we could also add into this paragraph something like, if you want some ideas on how you can approach your line manager or the chair of the relevant committee, then you should use the EAP for that assistance. Thank you.
I think there's also some additional sources of help at the bottom as well. Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, first I was going to, my point, basically what Edie covered, Councillor Ethan, still on it. Ethan covered at the beginning. Yeah, I 100% feel the need for this. I think it's different to something that's like a migraine or something. I think, let's be honest, we're a group of men talking about something where there is a stigma around it. And I think, yeah, it's definitely needed in that regard. I agree with what Ethan said about at the top of page 13 about if there's any ideas how to approach this with your line manager, speak to them, consult the EAP. And I was also going to say, actually, I don't think we should really change the line about sickness, saying there's no expectation of you if you're unwell because of menopausal symptoms. Or does it say you don't have to disclose that you're absent related to menopause? Because you could just say, for example, I've got a headache, I've got this. You haven't got to say I'm off because of the menopause. So I think that's covered in the policy. So I actually wouldn't change that.
That was the feedback I gave to the employee who mentioned it.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't suggest that there would be no explanation for why the person
You just say
was
being
sick,
unwell.
but you wouldn't have to mention the M word.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other comments on the policy? Do you want to agree, shall I propose that we agree the policy as written? Do I have a second of that?
Yes.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, item 7, to note progress with the introduction of a cycle to work scheme for employees. Clark, I can't see any papers.
No,
so
there
I've
is
seen this verbal
a verbal update on this. We have made progress with this. We have introduced the cycle to work scheme. We have used cycle to work as the provider. Just if you can just bear with me for a moment while I call up my notes. This we talked last time about the fact that if the value of the bicycle was more than £1,000, there would need to be a consumer credit licence. So at this stage, we've gone with a scheme where you can apply for up to £1,000 only. However, a number of staff have sort of commented that maybe that's quite a low amount for someone if you're wanting to have a bike that's fit to cycle from the other side of Milton Keynes to Bletchley. So we can sort of see what the uptake of the scheme is like and consider that again, because it wouldn't necessarily be very onerous, because we wouldn't need very many consumer credit licenses, or it's not that onerous, as I understand it, from our finance manager to get a consumer credit licence for this purpose. However, the plan is to carry on just with the scheme as it is at the moment.
Councillor Kelly-Wilson, you indicated.
Yeah, I think that so it can be very onerous to set up because there are a number of policies that you are required to have, because in effect you're becoming an FCA regulated organisation, and so there are things that you have to commit to as part of getting, and it is easier not to have to do them. I believe once the consumer credit licence has been issued, it is not as onerous, but there are quite a few steps that you have to go through, and a number of policies which you have to require that we don't currently have, that you have to demonstrate that you have.
Yeah, so the scheme we're using is Bike to Works, which seem to provide the most extensive choice of suppliers in our local area. It includes Trek, Cheneys and Corley cycles. Employees have been made aware of the scheme, and attention's been drawn to the fact that they'll be effectively renting a bicycle. We've notified them all of the valuation table of what the valuation would be of the bike at the end of the scheme. And as yet, this has only happened relatively recently, and as yet nobody's taken it up. But that's where we're up to. We have done as instructed and made it available on the terms you agreed as a committee.
Okay. Do we want to note the progress?
Noted. Yeah.
Noted.
Mhm.
Item 8, to receive a health and safety report on matters affecting employees and council activities. Clark, I'm assuming we can still do this in public.
Yes, we can. This is again as an oral report, I'm afraid. I want to report on two aspects of health and safety. One is the Legionella risk assessment. So the annual Legionella risk assessments have been carried out for Newton on the 5th of February for Newton Lees Pavilion, Spotlight, Fenny Stratford Community Centre and Sycamore House. They were carried out by Ravenscroft Environmental Services. All actions from previous risk assessments were seen to have been completed. All monitoring was up to date and kept correctly recorded, and effectively all sites received a clean bill of health on that, and the documentation from Ravenscroft Environmental Services available if you would like to see it. So that's the situation with Legionella in the premises. Then turning to work nest health and safety audits. You'll recall that I reported that our visits had been delayed due to an issue with work nests, the work nest expert consultant who's been working with us. But since the last meeting, we've had visits. On the 1st of February, the Barton Road Landscape Depot was visited and reviewed. That was quite a long audit because that's new premises and it's probably our riskiest location. On the 12th of February, Newton Lees Pavilion and Fenny Stratford Community Centre were inspected. And on the 13th of February, Spotlight, Sycamore House and our overall general risk assessment was considered by the consultant. There'll be a full audit and action plan arising from those visits, and unfortunately we haven't got it in time for this meeting, but it will be provided in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But after the visits were over, I sat down with the consultant and had an overview alongside the environment and premises manager. I think our consultant was very pleased. Overall, the health and safety measures, the monitoring and the arrangements in place across the premises were satisfactory, with relatively few minor actions identified, but obviously there were some minor actions identified. With regard to Barton Road, which was the main where most of the actions arose, we do need to make amendments to the COSH risk assessments for a number of specific chemicals that are stored at Barton Road alongside the COSH data sheets, which are already in place. So work's already started to update that. And whilst Rebecca, who's our consultant, was happy with the risk assessments in place, she has suggested bolstering the safe system of work at Barton Road as regards COSH. It's also been agreed that emergency lighting is required at the front and rear of the building, and that the fire extinguishers at Barton Road are renewed. So that's work's all been put in hand because it's very urgent. The Town Council had asked for a review of current loan working arrangements. If you recall that we did not renew the fob system for outdoor staff and loan working because we felt it wasn't really giving us the outcomes we needed, and all staff were asked to use their phones, and we agreed to provide a work phone for all members of staff. However, 2 members of staff who didn't have a phone, the finance manager and the administrator, said that they did not want a work phone and they would prefer to use their own personal phones for the purpose of checking in. And the committee agreed that that was acceptable. Rebecca reviewed the system and she felt that we did need to formalise it more and have a better and more documented procedure, which particularly as regards when people leave work, because we've got a very mixed team and people can be working on their own in individual buildings or attending evening meetings, which is essentially lone working. Nobody knows when they've left work. So we have got to tighten up on that. And it was suggested that we have a consultation with officers, all the staff together, to see what was the best way, whether it's a WhatsApp group and a checking in system so that whenever anybody finishes work for the day and sets off on their journey home, that's reported to a centralised WhatsApp, so that if anything untoward happens, somebody knows when the person left work. It's also been suggested that we should tighten up on our arrangements for next of kin to contact the council. So although we've got all the contact details for contacting next of kin, it's not clear that all the next of kin have good methods of contacting the town council out of hours. So that's another area that we've got to pick up on. So we're working on that. It was also identified that we need a new workplace stress risk assessment, and I have started preparatory work on that prior to consultation with the staff team once that risk assessment's been produced. Finally, two more things. Finally, penultimately, health and safety events was something that I raised with WorkNest, because I do feel that it's an area that we need to look at more, particularly with Martin's Law coming in and increasing concern about terrorism at public events. So we have agreed to conduct some internal training. WorkNest owed us half a day's work, which we're going to use for event risk assessment training, to try and help officers to understand that risk assessment must start at the very beginning of a project. Before council sign off an event, the risk assessment needs to have been done right at the beginning, alongside the staff requirements. It's become apparent that within the staff team there's a difference of view about how many staff are needed to conduct an event safely, and as a consequence I think we need to do training to help them to understand that it's probably more people than less. So that's being arranged. And then finally, we need to address the issue of business continuity planning for Barton Road premises as part of the council's general risk assessment, because if that premise is flooded, or we have an issue with that set of premises, and the rest of our premises are relatively straightforward because everybody can move to another set of premises, but we haven't really got the good business continuity plan for Barton Road. However, I think we can come up with one. I think we just need to do some thinking about it and come up with a plan. But that is something that needs to be considered. So the council's general risk assessment is due to go to finance and governance next week. So it will be looked at on that occasion.
Great.
That's my report.
There was a lot there. Any questions or comments?
Noted. Very thorough.
Noted. I'll look forward to seeing the work that you've mentioned on the Barton Road site. It'll be useful to know when that's been completed.
Yes, none of the councillors came and looked at Barton Road when we first installed our landscaping team, and we'd still be very happy to show people around. Councillors are always very welcome to come in and have a look at any sets of premises should they wish to.
Let's be honest here.
With notice.
With notice.
With notice.
Noted.
Noted, yeah.
Item 9, to review proposed changes to town council employee handbook and standard contracts as recommended by WorkNest.
If I could just address this before we start looking at it. We agreed that we'd review the the contracts and the employment handbook because they were due for review, but WorkNest were, for various reasons, unable to produce the new documentation until early in January. We got it in January. There are some changes to employment law which are due to take effect in April, specifically with regard to flexible working, and and the draft has been prepared on the basis of the old flexible working legislation, because WorkNest advised that the code of practice on flexible working has not yet been approved from a statutory point of view. So it may be that we need to either delay reissuing the staff handbook or be aware that we're going to have to potentially reissue it in time for the changes that are due in April. Also, NALC and SLCC have recently agreed new model contracts, so I asked WorkNest to review the contracts against those new model contracts, and I understand that they are compatible, although the handbook does not incorporate the Green Book terms on paternity leave, but I think that's already been included in the draft that you've got in front of you. So it's pretty much up to date, but there might still need to be a few tweaks in April.
Well, I would think, Chair, not to introduce, not to issue the book now, but to do it later. I think it's just a waste of effort and the paper and everything else if you've got to change it that quickly.
I would also support that, and there are some things in this document that I feel need some further work. Say some things the HR professional. So I would agree that it's probably best to kind of get those resolved and do it all as well.
Yeah, well, I did indicate to WorkNest today that I thought that might be the case, and that I was fairly sure that you would have some views on what's in the handbook as it stands at the moment. Is there anything you wish me to sort of take up with them at this stage?
So, may I go through them?
You can do.
Okay, so number 1, 210 driving. I'm really surprised. So there are 2 types of drivers. There are people who drive council vehicles, and then anybody who drives their own vehicle on business, which is, sorry, the people who drive the council vehicles, they are driving the council's fleet. The people that drive their own vehicles on corporate business, that would be called grey fleet. The people that I am talking about are the fleet drivers rather than the grey fleet drivers. Giving someone your driving licence, so we no longer have a counterpart. Mm-hmm. It is not good practice to say to people, here's a copy of my licence, and you should tell me if there are any issues with your licence, like you get points, because generally they don't do that. There's a piece of legislation called the, I might get it the wrong way around, Corporate Homicide and Corporate Manslaughter Act, and we as council are responsible if somebody goes out in a vehicle and unfortunately kills somebody. If we don't have the requisite steps in place to ensure that something was preventable, most businesses today will use some kind of driver electronic driving license check. So either using the share code, which is a very basic thing where the employee can give the share code to the employer on a regular basis. There are probably 2 companies that I'm aware of, Driver Check or Licence Bureau, that will process these checks on behalf of an organisation, and depending on the risk, so if you have got lots of points, you might get a monthly check. If you've got 0 points, you might get an annual check. So there are kind of maybe 2 or 3 ways of kind of dealing with that, and I just suggest that it would be better for us to rely on that, because if someone's really in fear of losing their job, they could kind of hold back. And I think that we would be best to do our own more detailed checks. So that's a suggestion with regards to driving. The other point is it's quite a way ahead.
So we just on the vehicle ones, are we happy for that to be explored?
This is on driving council
Vehicles.
yeah, vehicles. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay.
Take that one.
And then the next one for me was 4.3. And I should kind of say, I do not think it is a pecuniary interest, but I would like to say that I am an adopter. And so I'll just put that out there. It's 4.3, which now includes information about adoption appointments. So first point, if you read the first paragraph around pregnancy, there is no limit on the number of pregnancy related appointments that somebody can attend, but somebody who adopts is limited to 5. So I think that, you know, so there are lots of people, being an adopter myself, I can tell you that maybe 50% of people who would adopt might either be heterosexual and extending their family, or they're people who have had fertility issues and can't conceive naturally. But another 50% are, you know, either gay men or lesbians or even single people. And so for me, when I read the adoption appointments bit, it feels that there is the opportunity for it to be really unfair, particularly between how the different methods of acquiring a child, but also it could really affect gay people and kind of limit the fact that they're only allowed to have 5 appointments. So that is something that I feel that we need to look at some more.
While we're on 4.3, there's something I was thinking about as well, above the adoption point. It talks about if your partner is pregnant, you're entitled to unpaid time off up to 2 antenatal appointments. Well, firstly, I think it's actually a bit cruel, personally, to think it's unpaid if you're taking your partner to an antenatal appointment. And secondly, as someone who had a partner who had a high-risk pregnancy, I needed to take her to loads more than 2, and she was having lots of appointments, and also, especially towards the end of the pregnancy, there was no way she could drive. So I actually just think, I think the 2 is quite arbitrary, and I think also having it as unpaid. I think if you're going to have, maybe you could put something, obviously, well, firstly, I think it should be paid for 2 antenatal appointments for a partner. And secondly, I think it should have a line somewhere, obviously, say, you know, consult your manager if your partner has a high-risk pregnancy and requires more appointments, or something to that effect. I know that's general practice, that paragraph, because I know it's similar to what my organisation does, but it's still something I disagree with. And also, I don't think this handbook obviously takes into consideration how people can speak to their manager and agree time in lieu or whatever, but personally I just think that needs looking at again, that paragraph.
Councillor Cables.
I'm going to come back. I completely echo all the points that you've made, and you made one that I missed out on, which is around, you know, people who maybe are not able to or need that extra assistance with all of those appointments. The other point I want to make around adoption is people who adopt actually have to have training. So I had to do a 4-day course before I could actually even go through the assessment period. This wouldn't appear to be covered, so somebody's going to take holiday off in order to do that. And then there are also periods of assessment. I spent up to 35 hours with a social worker talking about my life, and this is and different elements of kind of how I believed I would parent, and even really intimate questions about my relationship. So I think that we should, allow this to be covered, and I think as a council we should decide whether we want to be family friendly or family unfriendly. And I think that we shouldn't really be looking at the legal minimum of what we have to do. We are an organisation where we have said certain things about how we want to be. We want to champion the climate and the environment. We want to be a living wage employer, and this feels like a policy where we're just doing what the minimum we have to do.
I'm in agreement. Clark, I guess this will need to be bounced back to you to look at what we
Yes,
can do on
I
that
will
section.
certainly, I hear everything you say, and I will certainly go back to WorkNest and talk to them about what the alternatives could be based on your feelings about the situation. I think in all fairness, I do have to say, I just remind the committee that we do have quite a generous leave entitlement, which is, in our council's case, is slightly higher than Green Book terms. And I think you should take that into consideration when thinking about this sort of leave. But I think I hear everything you say. I mean, even the suggestion that employees should arrange antenatal appointments at a time that will require the minimum of time off work. Well, exactly, that would be great, wouldn't it? But in what world is that possible?
You don't get given an option. They say you're coming in at this time.
No,
this
in
day.
what world is that
So I
possible?
completely agree with that. I was going to say that, but
That's Kelly Wilson.
I was just going to say, I do take the general point that we are probably more generous, but I think that we should not be masking things with other things. Like, so for instance, I'm not in agreement for someone who's sick to say, I'm going to take holiday to cover my sickness because it masks things. And I think that, you know, if somebody needs that appointment because they've got an antenatal thing that they need to go to or whatever, I think it's not important how much holiday people should get. I think that they should be able to take the holiday for a holiday, and for any new parent, sometimes they're going to need it. So I think that's a good thing.
Great. Anything else on that? Councillor Kelly Wilson, is there anything else on this document?
I have no other points to make.
Okay. So given what's been said, Clark, you'll take that back and you'll bring it back to us. The contracts, are we in the same position with the contracts? Are there?
I think the contracts have taken into consideration the new model contracts that have been approved by NALC and FLCC. So it may be that you feel you're able to adopt the contracts before we adopt the employment handbook. I mean, we haven't. These will be for new contracts, obviously. We're not planning to recruit at the moment, but who knows? It's a matter for you to decide.
I mean, I'm happy with it, apart from the point that I mentioned before the meeting, which was about the address of the town council.
yeah.
But I'm sure that will be corrected quite quickly. Are there any other comments on that?
I would just say that I agree with the comment that's on here. It says, is there a requirement to work outside of the UK at all? I would just take that out.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I would agree. I can't see it's going to Dubai to do council work.
Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Okay.
That's fine. Any other comments or?
Presumably we'll issue it in advance of the staff handbook, I would have thought.
We can adopt them now so that we use them as soon as we next recruit.
Yeah.
Okay, are we happy to adopt our proposal? We adopt it?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Do we agree to adopt them? Amazing. Right, next item 10, to consider procurement of health and safety and employment law advice for the council following the ending of the current contract with WorkNest in June 24. I assume again we're okay in public. So
Yes, but it's fine. The contract is in the public domain. We've had it for 3 years. It comes to an end in June, and so we would now. I think it would be good practice to re-procure at this stage and test the market. It's a matter for the committee to consider whether it wishes to continue with a specialist employment law provider, a specialist health and safety provider, a combined service, separate services. It could be argued that from an HR point of view, there is some advice available to the council via other sources and via the council's own insurance policy, which I think would be considerably cheaper than Work Nest or a similar competitor. So that's a matter for you to consider. There are probably cheaper health and safety providers, but I would be very anxious about not securing the services of a competent person, because we don't have a specialist competent person who can take on that role within the meaning of the health and safety legislation. We really do need an external provider for that. So I would be very concerned if you were considering not having a health and safety provider. I think slightly different with employment law in that there's a bit more, there are more sources of advice available out there. But there will always be occasions when we will need to consult an expert, and it does feel secure to have someone that we've already contracted to, rather than having to seek an employment lawyer every time. But there are definitely alternatives. I've been talking to colleagues about the alternatives that they're using, and I definitely think we should be doing a procurement exercise, because it's quite a lot of money.
I'm in favour of all of them being re-tendered. Yeah.
Great. I think I'm in that view as well.
Yeah.
That looks like everyone's nodding. So I propose that we look at all of those options. Keith, well, you proposed it. I'll second it.
Okay.
And we're all in favour.
Yeah.
Well
done, Ed.
Okay, just making sure we do it properly. Item 11, to receive a financial management report showing expenditure against budget for the year to date on employment matters.
So that's on page 107 of your pack. I haven't got any comments to make. Everything is on track, and I think you should be aware of everything that's there. But if you would want me to answer any questions, I will try to do so.
I think I would just note that actually this is probably the most closest I've seen this part of the budget being this close to the actual budget and what we've been actually spending. So well done for the finance team for getting that right. I mean, it's sometimes unpredictable with the staff number, but given that it's the largest chunk of our budget, I think that is something to be impressed with this time. Are there any comments on that report?
Okay.
Noted.
Thank you.
Hey. Item 12 is to consider exclusion of the public the following items of business, which are likely to include discussion of confidential personal data. So therefore, I propose that we remove any members of the public and any members of the press. Are we all in favour?
Agreed.
Clark, would you like to enter the team, whatever the YouTube and Teams and whatever it is?
Stop streaming now.
You're going to make sure it